Well, hey, Brooke.
Hello.
We are super excited about episode 3, about how much we are going to have to shake off to find our real selves. How can we perhaps consider being label free in a label filled world? And how do we remove the label and keep the experience, plus integrating our roles as mothers via healthy boundaries and practices for self-care, connecting with the I am. Because both Brooke and I realized that we define everything in our lives, from what we do to our gender, income, house, color, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the first question of what do you do already forces you into a box or label. So we are going to discuss the self-identity in the context of an ecosystem, who we are and who we choose to be for both ourselves and our families.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this conversation is so relevant to have because, first it's not that labels, they are beneficial in a sense because they can help us make sense of the world. And really that's what language is, right? It's just labeling something so that when you say something, somebody else knows what you're talking about. But to put it mildly, the last few years have been, intense polarization and labeling of each other, often based on just very singular, nuanced issues. And so I think much of our discussions through this podcast are so needed to be put out in the world, so that we can heal and grow and learn together. And then in turn, our children can be the change that we wish to see. And, it starts with us, and it starts with kind of breaking down some of those barriers and kind of what can we remove from labeling ourselves, labeling each other, and what opportunities do we have to learn from doing that. You agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, just thinking about the last 2+ years of the pandemic, we saw decades of long relationships melting away because of one's choice to wear a mask, not to wear a mask, to get the jab, not to get the jab, or if one is Biden's or Trump's supporter. And that kind of made me think that, a choice does not define a person. It's an opinion, and it's not your DNA or genetics that, by the way, by now we already know, according to the epigenetics, that it does, it can predispose, but it's not predetermining what the consequence will be. And also Dr. Zach Bush talks a lot about how even your genetics can change on a daily basis according to your biome and your biodiversity. I remember our son coming home from school one day and he asked if he is Jewish. Now, we don't raise them on religion, we raise them on spirituality. We raise them on spirituality that does celebrate the Jewish traditions, but we raise them on a why, like why are we doing it? Not necessarily we're doing it because our ancestors did it. So we didn't really tell them growing up, yes, you're Jewish. We didn't tell them anything. You're a human being, you are a soul, kind of like being label free. But him being in a school setting, coming back home to ask if he's Jewish, I had to peel off a lot of layers to have a discussion with him on what does that mean and what does he feel when someone asks him that or a different question, right? And so that awareness as a mother is a reminder to me to bring it back to a soul level. What are we here for? What are we here to do with as minimum of a title as I can?
Yeah, I love that. And you, like, by saying awareness, I think that is such the key of it all. It's like, by your son asking you, like, am I Jewish? Like, there are so many layers to that, and like, that's part of his heritage and foundation. There's so much in there that's good, but where can we have the awareness, and where are the places that we're kind of keeping ourselves locked in a box. And that's a lot of what I've been thinking a lot lately, especially in light of the last couple years. But it's like, where are we labeling ourselves and each other to a point where it stifles our growth, right? Because once you have built this identity of yourself, whether it's around your religious views, your political views, your cultural upbringing, like whatever that is, and it's probably a little of all of that, but all of a sudden it's easy to kind of like put blinders on, and you're seeing the world through that lens. And when we do that, it can often lead to having beliefs about something without really questioning them, or having and again, coming down to awareness. It's like, where can I ask questions about this, and where can I keep an open mind about this? And when we don't ask those questions and have that open mind, then I think that's where it leads us down like that path of dogma. And and that's where I think it can be very dangerous and very divisive, when we're going to unquestionably believe something because that's who we are as a person. So for me, it's like, I always like, it's like, even if I think I have the awareness that I'm not identifying with something, like I feel like there's always those places where even on an unconscious level, we probably are. So it's like, just like you said with your son, it's like peeling back those layers. Like, how many layers can I peel back of myself to really, it really allows you to have compassion and empathy for someone else when you can kind of see it from their perspective. But again, it's like having the awareness of the label is the first part, I guess, where you're like having that. So I think another place where we see the labels, or where it can kind of be detrimental, is the health and wellness in particular. And being coaches and doing this as a living, it's like you see all the time, like someone decides like, okay, I'm going to be vegan, or I am paleo and this is how I eat. And then it's like, you have, again, all of your identity wrapped up in that. Well, what happens if you're like a vegan? I'm a vegan, and then you eat a piece of meat.
That's so true.
Then it's like, all of a sudden you have like the guilt and the shame, and like, I'm not being who I said I would be. So I think that like, it's like you can create so much extra suffering for yourself by doing that too. And it comes from a place of good intention, like especially when we're speaking to that, like it's like, okay, I'm going to be, this is what's good for me. But again, like it's where are you creating more resistance than good by doing those labels?
Absolutely. And I think as a family, we had to adjust to that as well, because people are always curious about what we eat. We kind of shifted our health following. I had a Hashimoto thyroiditis, and I had celiac growing up, that I actually was able to heal through amazing mentors out there, through diet and supplements. And before that particular diet and supplements, I thought my diet was quite amazing, right? But it wasn't to my chronic illness need. And so the whole family shifted towards an even healthier lifestyle, lower in inflammatory foods, minimal processed foods. And so people are always curious about what we eat. And my husband, that was like a meat and potato type of guy, made the shift to veganism, right? And so my clients love it when they come over, and I actually open the fridge to show them what we consume on a daily basis, what my kids are having. And we used to say that we were vegans until the kids started craving meat. And I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to what the kids want. And we're just going to choose the best piece of meat. And we're not going to do it daily. Because personally, I don't believe that's something that I need to give the kids daily, because they're getting a lot of protein and iron from, spirulina and fruits and vegetables. And they eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. And so I was like, okay, so, if maybe once a week or twice a week, let me choose the best cut, the human raised, regenerative farming, everything that I can find in order to be okay with that. Because I don't eat meat, but for me, I was a vegetarian since I was 9. It's hard for me. It's a hard thing to do, not because I don't believe that it can be beneficial. It can be beneficial to some people, but I personally am having a hard time with that, but not with other people eating it. I'll never say, hey, I am vegan, because I'm not. Sometimes I do eat fish. I try to make it Atlantic and wild when I can, but it's going to be once a week or twice a week. And so our kids learn to say that they're vegan because of all the processed food that they have at school. No one comes to lunch with, the kids have bento box of fruits and vegetables and, this, hemp crackers. No one shows up. They show up with Cheez-It and Doritos. And so they had to say they're vegan. They had to go to the extreme for the teachers to understand that they don't eat processed food. And in fact, we got an allergy sheet before they started school, and they say, what do they need to avoid? And I said, processed crap. That's what's written on every one of our child's folder. Please avoid processed crap. I don't need them to learn how to count with Skittles. And in fact, so much of our food is banned in Europe. Why do they need to learn how to count with Skittles? Let them learn how to count in carrots and some hummus. So, I don't understand. So now when they do eat meat, they say to their friends that they're not vegans, but they occasionally eat meat. So that's what they say. But again, we're trying to get not fried, grass-fed, organic, and lots of veggies or fruit that they get to choose from on their plate. And then if they do eat something that's, interrupted their gut bacteria, they have learned how to look at their skin. If there's a rash, for example, because I have gluten intolerance, our children have that as well. So it's actually written in their medical records that they can't have too much gluten. But when they do want to have a slice of pizza outside of the home, it's not something I bring home. When they do have to have a slice of bread, we taught them to look at their skin, to notice how their body is accepting it. So for example, our son will have a rash on his skin if he has too much gluten. Our middle child will have the sniffles if she has dairy or processed sugar, and the other child will have diarrhea. So we're kind of like, by now they have learned to look at their bodies as a communicator. And we taught them, just like the dogs have their own language, your body has its own language. So let's drop the titles. You don't have to define what you're eating, but try to eat from the best option that is being offered to you at that moment. And yes, at home, we do make sure that they eat the best possible micronutrient filled foods.
Yeah, that is so incredible that you're able to instill that in your kids, you be in tune with your body, and then let that allow you to make the choices that you need to make. Like that right there, is so powerful. That's
because you don't want to deprive them of anything, but you want them to be healthy. And so, hey, look at your body. What is it telling you now? Is it happy? Is it what, are you vibrant? Do you have energy? Yes, you'll have energy from having M&Ms, but then you'll drop right away because it's a false energy.
Yeah. Go exactly what we were talking about with boundaries. It's like we can put these boundaries in place for them here, but when they go out into the world, they're going to be, So you've got to find another way to, a way to make it inward for them. Yeah. But I love when you said that, for your son, it's easier to just say that you're vegan because that's something that they'll understand, but that I think that too is, it's so true that sometimes labels like the beneficial part of labels. It's like sometimes it's hard to explain to people why, you know, you're not choosing this, even though you're not in the context of this strict label. So it's like, you know what, I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
like, it's just easier to say I'm a vegan,
Yeah.
you know, or like, I mean, I've done the same thing where like, and it maybe it would come across rude if like there's a lot of stuff that just, you know, I try to not, you know, I know that at home is where I'm getting like the most high quality stuff,
Yes.
but like if I'm out and it's like, I'm not going to eat all this stuff, it's like processed crap. And like, yeah. I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to say I'm gluten-free or like, you know, it's like, I'm not, but like, it's more acceptable for people, you know, if I just, if they can give me a label, it makes them feel okay about it in a sense. So it's like,
it makes them have the awareness of what they need to be cautious.
Right, where you don't have to go into this full
oh no, I don't feel like having bread today, but maybe tomorrow I'm going to count my carbs. Yeah, none of that. Just I am, you know,
yeah. Like makes it easier for other people.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah, so true. So, and so I guess like kind of, you know, a little bit on that same label thing, but going a little bit deeper, what, like, so with our, and I know we've kind of said before, but like, so Noah and I did Journey of Intrinsic Health for Coaches program with Dr. Zach Bush. And so the very first thing that the first module is I am, and like, who are you? Who are you? And so I just really, really appreciate that, like, that's such a beautiful place to start, right? Like, it's not like, you know, by sitting with just I am, we're kind of tapping into the being of who we are, removing all of the labels or the parts of our selves that our ego identifies. So it's like, you know, we automatically like, oh, well, I am a mother and I am a daughter and I am a friend and I do this for a living. And, you know, we have all of these things that define us, but it's like, really, when you sit with yourself, like, what if all of that was removed? Like what, and it could, like, it's like, who are you without being that? And it's like, at the end of removing all of that, you start to just recognize that you are eternal. You are like a soul. You are a soul in a body. And, you know, it's just so powerful when we can have that realization, when we can step out of all of these roles that we're playing, and do that. So I don't know, what are your feelings there?
I think that I actually had an argument with my husband's friend. Back then he wasn't my husband, but we were dating. And so he brought me to his hometown to meet his best friend. And he mentioned how this best friend said, it's the best thing to be a mother. And I said, it's the best thing to be a mother, but I want to be more than that. And he flipped. Like the best friend, he completely flipped. We started an argument. Now, bear in mind, it's the first time that I'm meeting him, right? We started arguing about, what do you mean? There's nothing better than being a mom. I said, I didn't say there's nothing better than being. I said, I want more. I want more. I want to contribute to the world more. What can I do to contribute to the world? So that argument back and forth, you know, was not useful to any of us, but it made me think about the roles. We play so many roles. We are so many roles with labels, right? Yes, we're playing a lot of roles. And at the end of the day is your imprint on this world. What is it going to be? Yes, it will be our children. God bless them. Amazing. Yes, it will be our children. The legacy will thrive through them. Where else? Where else can I make an impact? Who can I shine my light on? Like, where can I contribute? Where can I volunteer my energy? Where can I be a vessel for the light? How can I? So this is what the podcast is about. This is us too wanting to share how we are how we are a work in progress, first and foremost, and then how we are raising our frequency to raise our kids and raising a better world, right? Raising the frequency for a better world. And this is our contribution, right? It's not a job we come in, we get paid for necessarily, but this is where we want to shine our light. And that's what I meant by this argument that I had with him, is like, I want to contribute even more to the world. I want my kids to grow up and said, yes, she did this and that, and inspire them to never settle for just being comfortable. Being comfortable is very dangerous. When we get too comfortable, it's a very dangerous place. And I don't think it does justice to our souls that are meant to shine, that are meant to be abundant, that are meant to be, the best. And so for me, if I only quote unquote took the role of a mother without also accomplishing other things in my life, or I would say shining my light in other areas of my life, I wouldn't feel that I'm actually here on a bigger purpose for the world. Like, what is my purpose? Where can I be more of what I am?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's really interesting too, that and you all had not even really met each other, but obviously you hit a huge trigger button in him when you said, I want more than to be a mother. And I don't know, for me, like when I hear that, and like, I think that there is a lot of trigger around that, because in a lot of sense, like, mothers don't get the credit they deserve. Like, it's like, it is such an important role. Like, in many ways, you can argue that it is like the most important role. You are carrying, or shining a light for the future of, the future generations. Like, you are the ones raising them. So it's like, it's interesting that he had that sort of trigger, because I think that in a sense, like, there's a lot of insecurity, I guess, around that. Like even like people who are like, I like the stay-at-home mother archetype or whatever. It's like, in our society, that's kind of like looked down on, and it's like, well, it shouldn't be, because it's like, there's so much right there. Like, that's such an important job. Like, that
Absolutely.
is wonderful.
Absolutely.
So I think it's like, but again, like, it's like you were saying, like, it can be your job, like, that is what you do. But at the same time, like, where is that over identification coming from? And it's more like, can you just sit with the silence of just being? And like, and you don't like, but like, what, and I think a lot of women go through this, and I don't know personally from experience, but like, when your children leave and go off, like, I know that a lot of women all of a sudden kind of like, they don't know who they are,
right,
anymore, because they have identified so much. So I think that there's this beautiful opportunity to like be a mother, be all of that energy of a mother, and stay true to your identity and know fully who you are and what your purpose and your your what your individual identity, I guess, because I think too, it's like, in this world of like so much coming at us all the time, like these distractions, and like, look over here, look over there, like, look, this is what you should be doing. It's again, like, just becoming a clear vessel for like, no, I know who I am. I know, like, but the way that I think that you get clear on that is not by searching out. It's like sitting in the
searching within
and dropping it all. Yeah.
Right.
And just being, like it's that pure being. So,
And I remember my husband, when I met him, he's a soccer player and he's also an artist, and he did everything growing up. He played soccer professionally, he was on Broadway, so he really managed to do a lot of things.
yeah,
But he always felt like he needed to define himself. And so when we sat down, I said, how about you choose I am everything? Because I like doing everything. It's like, how about you choose I am everything? And that immediately solved his internal dilemma, which was really interesting to see. And we talked about how back in the Renaissance days, every person identified himself or herself, mostly himself, with many titles, right? I mean, Galileo, he was an astronomer, a physicist, and an engineer, right? Nowadays, we have to choose one. Why? Galileo was everything. So for me, it's I am enough that moves me forward, and I am enough at this moment, and then whatever I want to pursue is according to the season that I'm in. So if this season I am raising my kids and I'm taking care of my mental health, my physical health, making sure I have community around me to nourish me and release the serotonin, oxytocin, yes. And then a different season, now that my kids are in elementary school, okay, now where do I find myself? So it's not that I have to prove to myself or anyone, because I don't, but it's the fact that I entered this world as a soul that is here to accomplish something. And so for me, I sit with myself and I say, what am I looking to accomplish now? What is my desire? What is my desire? Where is my desire leading me to right now? And that's how I kind of figuring things out, right? Only in the last 2 years, I was like, okay, I'm going to do my master's degree. Why? Because that's what I felt like I need to shift into now that the kids are in school. Before that, I managed a lot of other things while putting myself on, let's say, the fourth on the list or fifth on the list, because there were other priorities. And so just like seasons, we're shifting into the next season in life. And just like so beautiful you said about the season where your kids are leaving the nest, you have to revalue your identity. And it's really, really hard. And sometimes couples do that. Couples that have been together for a very long time need to reveal to themselves, who are they? And if someone leaves or there is a divorce, like, what are you left with? Which parts of you are your husband's or ex-husband's, and which parts of you are really yours?
yeah.
So it's a constant checking in with yourself and see what it is that you're looking to have or do or accomplish or achieve within that season that allows you to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a testament to the power of presence too, right? That's all, like, just be present, be with the now. Like there's so much power in that, and that the more that you can be present, be open to the now, like totally in the moment, then you're able to recognize more of those flowy shifts. Like, now I'm in this season, now moving to this season where, oftentimes if we're so much in our head looking at the future or thinking about the past, it's like all of a sudden, we were kind of going this path, but we were actually, when we kind of open our eyes, we realized that we're like way over here, and we thought we were way over here, sort of thing. Like, so yeah, right. The more that we can allow ourselves to like tap into that moment to moment, and like, how are, what are we experiencing right now? How can we flow with what is? Then the more we can kind of keep in that, like, now I'm veering this way, actually I'm going that way. Like, right. It's all okay. It's all okay. Yeah. It's the awareness.
Yeah, which applies to the diet that you mentioned before. You could start as a vegetarian. Exactly. It's okay to change your mind.
Yes.
You don't, you
Yeah, it
didn't
might
marry
not be
the label.
working for you anymore. Yeah.
That's it. Break up with the
Yeah.
label, free
Right.
yourself from it. And it's not
Yes.
working. You know what? Right now, 30s, 40s, you may lose some muscle mass. You may need something different. Women and men are not the same. With our cycle, we lose a lot of iron. What do you do in that season to replenish yourself will be very different than what a man that does CrossFit on a regular basis does, right? So watch your seasons, go with it. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to break up with the label that started you off that course. It brought you this far for you to evolve and progress and move forward. Don't get stuck. Move, keep moving.
Yeah,
Everything in our body, nothing in our body is staying still.
exactly.
Nothing. Everything has frequency. Even inanimate object we know that have frequency. And so you as well, just tune in, be in that stillness, be within yourself to realize how much vibration you have within you and how much permission you can give yourself to move forward. Go with the flow, move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's yeah, the, and again, like kind of moving full circle, it's like, oh, like not over identifying with that label will allow you to
Mm-hmm.
break from it when it's no longer serving you.
Yes.
That's, I think, one of the huge keys. Um, the other like kind of component, I guess, with labeling that I think of often is just the labeling of an experience of good versus bad, and learning how to look and experience through the lens of a more neutral position. So coming from a place that everything that we go through has no meaning except for the meaning that we choose to give it. So it's like, I think sometimes people, I know when I initially heard that, it's like, oh, you're just denying reality. It's like, well, no, it's not a denial of reality. It's not denying any sort of pain or hardship. Like, feel the pain, feel it fully. But it's allowing yourself to feel it without attaching to it, without
Mm-hmm.
creating more of a story around it than it needs to be given. Because the more that you create that story around it, the more power you're giving that pain, the more.
Absolutely.
So it's like allowing yourself to fully feel. It's not denying it. You don't want to do that. And I think that, like, well, but like just in my personal experience, like there's so, like when you look at neuroplasticity, I totally see that. Like I feel, still have a lot of times where it catches me, but like I really do think that I've been able to kind of like put a lot of the circuits in place in my brain that, like, when something bad happens or something that's just not that wonderful, like okay, what can I learn from this situation? What is this situation trying to teach me? So knowing that, that's one thing that I like am very aware of with my daughter. Like I don't know, I don't, it's like it's hard because there's certain behaviors that like are not desirable in her. She's 2.5. Like, okay, we don't need to throw ourselves on the ground every time we don't get what we want. But it's like, I don't want to call her bad. I guess that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not, I think that, when we're talking about our children, like it's just being very careful about the labels that we're giving even them. Like, oh, well, that's a good kid. That's a bad kid. That's, it's, let's
Mm-hmm.
be neutral. Like
Mm-hmm.
where can we take what the behavior is and separate that from the child? And what can we do to, help redirect that? So,
Right. And I
yeah.
think that pointing at great behavior is always a better motivator than saying this is a no, right? Like I feel that with our kids, I learned the most from our sons. Like he was in daycare when I was working. He was 1.5 years or 2 years old, and I learned a lot from her. And I remember when kids were misbehaving or just really didn't know where to direct their energy to, she used to sit down with them, and they're a year and a half old, and she used to sit with them. She said, let's have a conversation. Let's talk. And she set them in her kitchen because it was in her house. She set them in her kitchen, with a glass of water and said, let's talk. What is going on? They're a year and a half. And that seed of communication was planted in my soul. And that's what my husband and I have been trying to adopt ever since. Let's talk. Let's go to your room. There've been a few times where we said, okay, you obviously something is going on. You're not talking to me. You're not putting it into words, which is really hard for kids to do, especially when they're that young as your child is.
Right.
Like, it's hard to put it into word, but especially with our middle one, we're like, what is going on? Can you try and express? You know how to talk. You're not a baby. You don't have a diaper. Can you try to tell me in words what you're feeling? And honestly, Brooke, only last year, and she is 6, so only when she was 5 or 4.5, she's like, I feel angry, or I feel sad, or I feel hungry. But the way that we worked with them was, something is going on. Please try to put it into words. I am listening. But the one thing that we notice is that if we react, because you talked about reactivity, if we react, that blows it.
Yeah.
I can't react to what they're doing. I need to focus on why they're doing it. Are they hungry? Did I not feed them on time? Are they tired, right? Especially at your daughter's age. Are they tired? Are they hungry? It's the first things that you'll see tantrum. Or now, are they looking for attention? Have I not given them enough attention? Probably not. I'm still doing, my PhD right now. So yes, probably I did not give them enough attention. So I try to stop and say, okay, let's talk about it. And you hear in words what you just saw in behavior, right? So
Yeah.
for me as a person, when I do something, when I react, because we're all, like we said, work in progress. When I react to something, I need to ask myself if this is an imprint of the environment in which I grew up in. And if that is the case, if this is a reaction of my mom or my dad, then where do I begin? How can I break the karmic chain and deal with my kids differently? How can I not give a cookie for good behavior? Or, my mom used to hit a wall if someone used to cry, say, I'm going to hit the wall that hit you. That's not something I want to do necessarily, So to stop giving the cookie to a child who does well, and just to celebrate them with words, and to teach them to stand up for themselves and try to talk through their emotions after they had the emotion roller coaster. That is okay. That's part of it. I don't want to interrupt that flow. So I have to ask, what came first, the seed or the apple? What am I reacting to? Am I reacting to my child, or am I being my mom who is reacting to me?
Yes.
And that realization is everything. So are we who we really choose to be, or am I an extension of who I saw and heard when I grew up, which is the first role model of a female would be my mom, the first male role model would be my dad. That is a conversation I have to do with myself way before I try to quote unquote discipline my child how they need to behave, because they're an extension of exactly what we want to do. If you're going to bring your child in a boring environment, you're hearing a lecture, trust me, you do want to put yourself on the floor and start kicking. You probably want to do that as well.
Right. Yeah.
Or so
Yeah.
they're demonstrating what we're feeling. And so many times I laugh internally, because I too sometimes want to scream and not be said, oh, come on, you're an adult, you shouldn't scream, you shouldn't cry, you shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point too. It's like, okay, well, it's like, let the child be the child. I mean,
Yes.
yes, I totally get that, throwing a tantrum is not always like the most beneficial. However, like they're expressing their emotions. Like
Yes.
those are real emotions that they're having, and they are expressing them. And that's why I think, like how you were saying, like the identification of feelings is so important. And like, I think like it's so much that as adults now, like I think that a lot of us, just with our upbringing, and that's why I think every generation it's a way to do better. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I don't really remember ever being taught to identify my emotions. Like, okay, you have anger arising right now, and that is, I think you see that playing out so much in our world. Like, it's like all this suppressed anger
Mm-hmm.
coming out in the, like, something just seemingly benign triggers someone. Well, it's like all of this suppressed anger where they weren't able to just identify,
To label
like,
it.
emotion, to label it, and then find a healthy way to express it. And I think that's like the key. It's like your emotions are your emotions, your feelings are your feelings. Like, and it's like, you shouldn't, I never want to teach her that she should just ignore,
Right.
that this feeling is arising in her. But it's like, okay, how can we find a way to deal with it that's a little bit healthier of a way to
Yeah.
deal with.
And maybe also, how can we stop the train from going off track early enough?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you notice patterns that may have triggered her, when is it usually happening? Is it really before she goes down for a nap? Like our youngest one used to cry before she went to bed. That was her routine. And that came into her automaticity, right? Her brain, it's like classical conditioning, right? With dogs and all that. But it's like her brain all of a sudden knew that she had to cry in order to fall asleep. She taught herself that she needs to cry to fall asleep. So how do you break that pattern? So I realized that after a few days went by, I was like, I'm gonna hug her. I'm seeing that she cried. I know she ate. She's possibly tired, but it's also 7:30, so she's tired. So, I'm gonna hug her. And that's how I broke her pattern that she got herself into of crying before she goes to bed.
Yeah.
And so it's all these questions that we have to ask ourselves as a parent. What is going on with my child, while allowing some emotions? Yes, we don't want our kid to throw a tantrum at public. Who wants that? Not me. I don't want them to, quote unquote, misbehave, but I also want to respect the personality and the individuality, that they are here to show me what I need to work on. I want to be free. They're showing me how to be free.
Yeah.
Right? Their behaviors are also a reflection of perhaps something that I may have done not knowingly, perhaps.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we have that like slotted as a whole nother episode, because I think
Yeah.
there is so much you can, like, what triggers us from our children.
Yes.
We have so much that we can learn from that. Like, there's so much opportunity to learn in that. Yeah.
And as we started with label free, trying to get away from label as much as we can. Whoever follows Abraham Hicks, they have a great soundbite that's been on social media, and it demonstrates an attempt for a label-free conversation. And it goes, so when people are asking you what you're doing, you say, things that please me. And they say, toward what end? And you say, pleasure. And they say, but really, what are you working on? And you say, having a good time. And they say, but what do you hope to accomplish? And you say, living happily ever after. And then they say, but what do you want to leave as your legacy? And you say, I was a happy one. And they say, but what is the mark that you want to leave? Life is joyous. And they ask in response, but what is the value that you see yourself contributing to this time, space, reality? And you respond, I am joyful. But what do you hope to accomplish? Being happy, right? Back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
So that conversation is like, but what do you do? Like the what, the noun, the label, the box.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to wrap their heads around that you just want to be, back to the be. And yet that's what all the existence is about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's so ingrained in us to label, and like we're saying, it does, it helps make sense of the world. There's a lot of value in labeling and being able to communicate with each other, but it's like, where are we where are we losing the essence of who we are, and what even in an inanimate object, like when you label a bird that has feathers and wings, like, okay, then everybody knows what you're talking about when you say a bird, but like, it's like, and Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about this. It's like, can you just observe without labeling? Can you just look at a bird with new eyes? Like, you know nothing about this creature. And it's like, when you can drop that label, even of something so simple as a bird or a tree, maybe you can gain a little bit more of like the essence of what is of that penis.
That's beautiful. And all the while they're teaching, like our kid is in first grade, they're teaching her, the boy kicked the ball, the girl went to the right. It's hard. Being labeled completely is hard.
It's from a young age we're being programmed the exact opposite.
Exactly.
So it's like,
exactly. As like, adults, we want to peel off those layers.
Right. It's and again, it's like everything, right? Like finding the balance in that. Like, yes, you know, with our children, they're learning labels and like, this is this and that is that, but you know, there's also an opportunity to just allow them to see with fresh eyes, because they don't have as many labels as us. That's the beautiful thing too.
That's right.
They don't have a lot of that programming. So where can we, you know, allow them to get their teachings and their schoolwork, but also like allow them to view without those labels as well.
Absolutely. I think maybe semi-conclusion, at least for me, would be, if you're stuck in a label that's been defining you or what you do for long enough, re-explore it. Re-explore it. Like, what does being a mother mean? What does, you know, for the longest time I put I am a soul on Instagram, on my Insta account. I was like, I am a soul. It's like, that doesn't do shit. Like, what I'm a soul. What? And they're already giving you categories. No, what are you? Public speaker, wellness, like already, it's like, okay, I'm a soul is not gonna be good enough for, you know, and the Insta account, but maybe, and then I try to play around with, and I still change it up a little bit because I haven't finished defining who the heck I am.
Yeah. And nor should, you know, it will always be evolving and changing, and that's beautiful. Yeah.
That's the beauty of our life. Yes.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. Peel back the layers.
Yes.
Peel all those labels you give yourself. See what's left. The essence of you. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you all for listening. This was our episode 3, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.